Today's best music.
Magic 89.9.
Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday once again, and it's another edition of the chat room for those of you listening, working from home over Magic 89.9, and of course on the road, taking us with you. Hello, I'm Boom Gonzalez, the host for the chat room, and in this week's episode, just as at the last moment, we were supposed to have 3 guests, but now we have 2. Nonetheless, it's going to be a great show because we have 2 guests who you probably have not seen or heard from in a long time. For those watching on Facebook Live, you already see it. And of course on the Kumu app and on Twitch through the Magic 89.9 website. Jessica Mendoza from the top 5 at 5. Tama ba yun?
Yeah.
And,
oh my God.
And Mia Bayuga from On Demand is with us, supposed to be with us just to, tell people out there, and hopefully he can still jump in, was Mojo Jojo from Good Times. He has not responded. He was the one. He was the one most excited. He was the one most excited about this episode. But we hope you're okay, Mojo, if you're listening or watching at some point. Hello, girls. I wore an old Magic T-shirt for today. I dug. Yeah, it's a little tight. I dug and found something so that it will be appropriate for this episode. How have you guys been? You start, because I know you're the one who's almost falling asleep.
It's midnight here. I sleep early now.
Right.
I'm good. I think it's hard to talk about being good these days a little bit because of everything that's going on. But I was laughing, you're saying a top 5 at 5. I'm like, do people even remember? It's been so long.
Well, the ones who are watching this and watching out for both of you for sure will remember that. Mia, how have you been?
I'm great. Things are good. I'm in Las Vegas right now, and it's hot, but things are good.
But you're in a sweater. You're like in a big old...
I know, I'm indoors. Again, something that fits, right?
Well, knowing Mia, she's probably not wearing anything anyway. So that's why it makes up for it. Well, thank you for making time and for joining me. I know I had to pull you up. It's 2 a.m. I think 2 a.m. Okay, it's 2 a.m.
Oh yeah, okay, right.
Correct.
Alive.
Correct.
It's 2 a.m. I had
Still
to
works for me.
Both of them, yeah, to join me. I know the time is not favorable to you, but when there's a drink, it's favorable to everybody. All right, cheers, guys.
Agreed.
Cheers. What is the poison for Jessica, Mia?
I
Whiskey.
think this is bourbon. We just usually have some at the house.
You're having a bourbon, Mia. What are you having?
Whiskey.
Whiskey too. Okay,
Yeah.
like me. All right. See, so it doesn't matter what time.
Or where?
We could have used Mojo's fruit drink.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll never know. Mojo might join us in the next hour or so. We'll see. Okay, for those of you, again, listening or just tuned in to Magic 89.9, Jessica Mendoza, Mia Bayuga with us. I was thinking about this episode, and there's so many things that you, Mojo, and Mia and Jessica have in common for people who are probably trying, maybe wondering or trying to recall, or maybe even watching for the very first time.
Memories.
Or listening for the first time. I just want to establish a baseline of the conversation. The reason why I thought about this was, again, there are many stars on Magic 89.9 who have now moved on, are doing many things. So we could get anybody, and we have access to a lot of these great former DJs who are great friends of ours. But the commonality, the common thread among the 3 of you, supposed to be with Mojo here, was that you all packed up your bags at the peak of your powers. Let's just put it that way, at the height of your popularity and fame, and moved to the same country, the 3 of you, in different states, and made a life which is, totally different from what you had here. So that was my thinking, coming up with this episode. It's not just, hey, getting a gang back together. No, it's not as simple as that. I wanted something a little more layered than that. And that was the thread, that you guys totally gave up everything. So I'm and then I was thinking, well, how am I going to start the show? Then I realized there's no other better way to start but to ask, why'd you move? Because behind that question is, some people move for different reasons, regardless of the family relocates or job opportunities, or sometimes a breakup, sometimes just a change of culture, a life change, trying to find yourself, whatever the reason may be. And that's what I really wanted to find out first with the three of you. Let's start with you.
Are
Enough
you keep
of me.
starting with me? Shouldn't we do this in chronological order?
Come on, Jen, let's go.
First.
Wow, all of a sudden you girls are gun shy. Wow.
I'm like, what? Huh? It's been a while.
So you left in 2013, Jessica, right? Okay, that's what you said. Okay, so it's been 7 years already. Let's go back to that time. Why did you leave initially? What was the thought process behind it?
I think I had wanted to go to grad school for a while. I think that was something that had been sort of percolating in my mind for a couple of years. And it's hard to think back now exactly how I was feeling. I just remember thinking that if I didn't do it then, I was never going to do it. And I had been in radio and had been covering basketball for just long enough for me to start asking myself what I wanted next and where I wanted my career to go.
Right.
And I just felt like that's not where I wanted to be in another 5 years. So I think at the time I'd been working in radio for almost 5 years, and collectively UAP and PBA, something to that effect also.
And you were beginning to write, if I may interrupt real quick, you were also beginning to write for a website, if I'm not mistaken?
So I had started writing for, I think it was for FHM, for like their sports section.
Right.
I started doing some of that and knew that was like, writing had always been my first love, and like it had never become a big part of my career outside of writing my own copy for UAP and then PBA. And just felt like that was something that I wanted to pursue, and it felt like, if not now, then when? So I just started like quietly sending applications to grad schools in the States, and I knew I could come because I was a citizen and my parents supported it. And then when I heard back from a school in Boston, I was like, why not? I can do it now, so I'm going to do it.
So it was a school thing. It was something
it was a career thing. I think the school was a vehicle for me to move, to change directions.
Right.
It was a reason to because I could have just like quit and then come to the States with no prospects, knowing basically nobody in the field that I wanted to get into. So I felt like I was fortunate enough to be able to access school and also get in one. So
right.
It worked out, yeah.
Okay, and Mia, you left 2012. It's been 8 years.
Yeah.
Since. Well, yeah. Now that I think about it, it doesn't feel like it. Obviously, you and I were often in touch. We've obviously stayed in touch more than we should. I don't know if you know what I mean. At the wee hours of the morning, just talking about random stuff. You also, and I love you for this. You also flew all the way to Singapore for my wedding, and I really appreciate that. You're the ultimate wing woman, as I always say. You've always been. But what was the impetus for you to leave the country again at the height of your popularity, your fame, which you did not achieve on my show? You achieved on Good Times, obviously.
That's also debatable.
When you switch shows, that's when it happened.
Maybe it was height of popularity off air. Our time on air came to an end, and then I switched over to the morning show, and that was a whole complex of its own, and it was great. But I think ultimately I always had the plan of coming back to the US. It's just my dad was here. My family's all here. I was only in the Philippines for 5 years. So there was no intention of being there forever, although it served me really well. It treated me great. But again, the intention to come back was always there. the following year I had my son. So it was just right. There's no better time to be here and commit to a city, especially while raising him.
And yours is an interesting story because you also you were always, and we had this conversation a long time, many times. You always were wherever your feet would take you, right? You've always been that kind of person. You lived in La Union for a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Was it a couple? People might not know that or forget that. That was kind of the time prior to Magic 89.9
Right.
days. Right. So you've always had that in you, though. Was there any other country that you saw yourself transferring to or living in other than the U.S., or was it just really the U.S.?
Yeah. I mean, Spain's always been in the back of my mind, but again, it's just wherever my dad was, where my family was, my cousins. I wanted to be near because I grew up in an environment with my family, and I know how important that was, and I didn't want to take that away from my child, also. So, U.S. just made sense, but I don't know about right now.
Are you both American citizens, right?
Dual. Yeah.
A dual. Okay.
Dual, yeah, same.
Right. Let's clarify that because that's a little bit of a big issue here in the Philippines right now. just in case you're not in the know about certain things that have been happening around here. Was Mojo also same? Would you know?
I don't know. I can't speak on his behalf. I'm unsure.
Right.
We're certainly
I don't know why I feel like I remember him being dual, but anyway, all right. So that's another commonality that you thought about. Je, was there any other country that you thought about in terms of moving to during that time that you made that decision around? What was it? You said you were 2 years before you actually moved. Is that what it was?
I don't know exactly how long I've been thinking about it, but I've been thinking about it for a while. Yeah, I mean, I thought about Europe also, but kind of vaguely. I mean, I have family in the States, right? So I have family in California. That helped. We lived here for a while when I was growing up. So it felt like if I was going to do something crazy and major, this seemed like the right place to go. It was like,
yeah, it helps.
It was unfamiliar, right?
Yeah,
exactly. It was familiar, but it was unfamiliar, but it was also not as unfamiliar as other places would have been.
Right. For those again listening and just tuning in, we're talking to Jessica Mendoza and Mia Bayuga, formerly of Magic 89.9. For Jessica, it's been 7 years. For Mia, it's been 8 years already. You mentioned the word crazy. Was it at that time in your head? This is crazy. This what I'm doing is crazy. Did you even think about it that way? Was it perceived that way?
Yes. I don't know about Mia, but for me, absolutely. Right. I think less so in my head. I think once I made the decision, I felt like I was going to do it, and there wasn't really a lot anybody could say to make me change my mind. It took me a while to convince myself that it was the right thing to do, but Bud, you were there, and I asked you for your advice at this point, and I think it just felt right for me at the time. And there were a lot of people who would ask, like, why are you doing this? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And sometimes I would ask myself that question too. But I think even before I had left, I knew it was the right thing, and that was very much confirmed after I had made the leap.
Okay, we'll get to that. I like that part, and we'll get to that in a bit. Mia, did you think of it as? I know you already said that it was already part of the plan at some point, but again, in context, for those who are listening, did you think it was crazy when you think about the context of what was happening? You were. It's not only obviously Magic 89.9. You were a successful host already here. You're getting endorsements and all of that stuff. So that's why the word crazy might be different for the two of you, or for even with Mojo, who was at the height also of his powers, so to speak, as compared to somebody who just uprooted, going to the US, who didn't have that kind of stuff to leave, if you know what I mean. Right. So with that as the background and the context, did you think it was a crazy move?
I think it was one of those things where you really don't know how it's going to pan out, but you have to trust in the position you're in. It's uncomfortable. And I know we're like creatures of comfort and we just love to know what's going to come next, but it's hard to, and you just got to be prepared for whatever is next. And we're very private people when it comes to personal things. So I did have moments where I was like, this is crazy. What am I going to do here? I'm in Las Vegas. I don't know a single person. I'm leaving my community of Manila. So it was frightening, but nonetheless, you do it and you find a way to excel in it.
Yeah, and
Well,
I don't want
go
people
ahead.
to think it like. I was just thinking about this while Mia was talking. I was like, I think it helped a lot to have been where I was.
Yes.
To be able to make that move, like the confidence that I built.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean where you were?
Like that you're talking about us being sort of successful, or
Okay,
our careers. I think that like success. No, I think the confidence that builds in you as a person. I think if I hadn't been in that place in my life at the time, I wouldn't have had the guts to make that jump.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Like it had to. I'm a different. It's been 7 years. It's a different place for me now, but you're making me think back to who I was then, I think, and that's just like, wait, what was I thinking? But I really do think that if I wasn't at the place I was in my career and hadn't built up that confidence in myself, I don't think I would have been able to say that it's going to be different.
I get it. Well, two things. First, this is the reason why I didn't pre-interview you guys, because I told you I just wanted you to. I just wanted us to like come out with whatever it is that you felt at that time. I didn't want you to prepare. So if it takes you back, whether that's good or bad, I apologize. But also, what you said is interesting in the sense that there are always two ways to think about it. When you said that gave you confidence, the fact that you were already who you were and you were climbing the ladder. And that gave you confidence to do what you did. Did I understand that correctly, right? But there's also that other side of the argument that, then why give it up, right? But that's what the other side will contest. Because I'm sure your fans, Je and Mia, are wondering about that part, or wondered back in the day. I'm sure they're not wondering about that anymore, because they probably already assumed that you moved on, and assumed also that you guys, wow, they found themselves, they're very happy with what they're doing. But at that moment, it is hard to fathom if you're a big fan.
Yeah.
And you can't blame your fans for thinking that you gave up all of that stuff. Was it tough to give up? Okay, the question earlier, was it crazy? You answered that. Now, was it tough about giving up all of that stuff? Mia, let me start with you. Giving up all of that.
I think in our time of Magic, we were so visible and we built relationships with our listeners. Like, we actually had great conversations with them, and it wasn't just like a one-sided thing where we would just speak on air and that was it, close the books.
Correct.
I still talk to some of our listeners till today. They still check in on me. They ask about Gabriel, my child.
Are they DMing you? Is that what it is?
No, it's totally public. But,
There's a record.
We found a way to really just build this relationship with them, and we're connected. And yeah, it's tough to let go of it, but again, if you take the time to really to build something, it's not going to go away based on what country you're in. Like, location, proximity, it only holds a certain weight.
This is the ultimate leap of faith moment. Jack, same question. With what I threw at Mia, was it tough? Was it difficult? I mean, other than the family part, because we know that already. I mean, unless you guys all hate your family, which I don't. You know what I mean? Let's assume. Exactly. Let's assume that, besides the point, the whole family part of it, was it tough leaving with everything happening to you already? TV, radio, print, whatever, and all the other free stuff that you guys were getting at that time.
Yeah, it was hard. It was scary, and it connects to what you were saying earlier. Like, people were always questioning it. Like, you always had to contend with the fact that people were skeptical about the decision. And for myself, I was like, am I doing the right thing? And then the actual move. I mean, I moved to Boston. I'd never been to Boston in my life before I moved there. I was just like, here I am. And yeah, it was really hard. And it was a little bit lonely at first. You are like, you go from what Mia was talking about, where you have this whole community, you have a career, you have people around you, you have our the Magic family within the studio, but also the fans and the listeners. And you kind of suddenly find yourself totally isolated. And in some ways that was really
refreshing
also.
Right.
But it was also really scary. It was really scary.
Right.
What did he say?
So refreshing. Was it refreshing also?
It was a little bit. It was a little bit. A little bit, yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes I think we need that. We need a little bit of solitude. Like we were so just surrounded by work. I mean, thank God we had the work, but we didn't say no to anything. We were just going, staying busy, and busy is not always productive.
What was the liberating part about it? I mean, for those who don't get it, because there were, surprisingly, Bud, parts, there will be people who don't get it, and it's not your obligation, obviously, our obligation, your obligation to explain to everybody else. I always say the most important thing is your inner circle, and that's the most important people who will get it. It's like all the criticisms that you get on social media when we were doing, media stuff, sports stuff. To me, that stuff doesn't matter, because it's that little circle that really matters to you. But what was so, just to look back at it, and just that we're drinking about it and we're talking about it, and we're reminiscing about it. What was so liberating and refreshing about it too? What was there a certain sense of freedom? Was there a certain sense of, again, aside from the whole family factor, was it a certain sense of chains being, just all of a sudden, you as people are unleashed into an unknown world? Is that what it is?
I think the privacy was
okay.
one thing. Because again, we put ourselves out there, and I know we were limited in terms of what we wanted to share, but so much of us, it's like if we didn't give freely to our listeners, they wouldn't receive it well either. So to kind of just be quiet was nice. I realize I'm a much quieter person about my private life than I was back then.
Yeah. Similarly, I think that was part of it. I think too. So I started in radio my junior year of college, and I became a courtside reporter the following year. So I was a senior.
Right.
And I just never, and I know, like, in the grand scheme of things, that's not super young. Some people start very, very young. Especially now.
Getting younger and younger, yeah.
But I think it wasn't really like I had a plan that was what would happen. And it felt very much I was swept up in these like amazing opportunities, and just sort of ran with it. And I think by the time I left, I had gotten to a point where I needed to pause and ask myself if, like, was this what I wanted, or was what was in front of me, and so I was running with it. And both of those things, whatever the answer was going to be okay. But I just needed that pause. And I think when I went to the States and I realized that, like, that wasn't where I kept wanting to be, like, that wasn't necessarily the path that I kept wanting to take, that was what was liberating to me. It was like I had made this decision for me, not because it felt like what everybody else said was the cool thing to do,
right.
Which I hope that doesn't sound like I was ungrateful or didn't love what I was doing at the time, because I really did. But like 19 is not the same as 24. And I just needed the space to stop and think about who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do with my life. And I just had never had that chance because we were working all the time. You were too busy working to really think about what you wanted.
Right. And we're talking to Jessica Mendoza, formerly of Magic 89.9, of course, top 5 at 5 with Andy 9. She is in DC. Am I correct? DC, right? While Mia Bayuga, of course, formerly of On Demand and On Good Times, all the way from Vegas. if for those listening on radio, in their cars or working from home, and again watching on Facebook Live, on the Kumu app, and through Twitch on the Magic 89.9 website. Oh, I don't like what you're drinking. That's water. That's water. Come on.
I was hoping you would notice.
Come on. Hey, no.
Robert.
I was like, namumuna na ako. I was like, I should have some water.
Your
Cheers,
eyes are
guys.
gonna
Cheers,
tell.
cheers.
Your eyes, Jen.
Cheers, cheers.
I've been practicing making my eyes bigger even when I'm drinking.
Just to get the audience in on it, again, Mojo Jojo, for those of you who just tuned in, was supposed to be part of this. Last minute, we couldn't get a hold of him. Hopefully, Javier is okay. But it is funny, we saw some pictures, obviously, when I was asking for pictures for what the audience has already seen for our social media posts in the last couple of days before this episode. And and some of the pictures, obviously, were, wow. We're like, holy moly.
It's so funny because you look at those and it's like, you're like, hey, send us some photos of you guys on radio. I'm like, okay, sure. So I started looking through it. And I'm like, I've even got to catfish these guys. Like, I don't look anything like this. I was like 8 years younger.
Oh, come on. You guys look, if not, you guys look better than when you're on radio.
First, after this, we're going to bed. I don't know what you're
I'm just like, I don't know.
That's what I'm going to say. But they didn't want, I'm sure they didn't want, or probably they would want to see the other pictures that Mojo Jojo shared for all of us.
No.
It is unfortunate that he is not with us today. Our topic, our theme for today, our discussion centers on, it's pretty much a homegrown conversation. Former Magic 89.9 DJs dropped everything and then went to the States and completely did something very different. That's another thing, it's not like you went to the States and made a parallel move in terms of the careers that you guys got into. What was the fear? All right, let's talk about that. You get there, all right, you've made the decision. You said F you to everybody else, and you've decided, you made the move. You've already ditched the comfort of your celebrity status at the height of your powers. Tell me about the fears and the realities that faced you in that first, let's just say in that first year of moving to the US. Anybody can go first. I'm gonna get to both of you anyway.
I never lived away from my family before. I'd never lived by myself before.
Which is both scary and exciting.
Oh, it was amazing and horrifying all at the same time. I didn't know how to cook. Literally anything. I remember I was like a college student, and when I talk to my friends, I realized that the way I was my first year here was what they were like their freshman year of college. I was like eating bread with peanut butter on it over the sink, so I wouldn't have to wash any dishes. And it was the only thing I had in the house, like that sort of vibe. It wasn't hard, but it was just so different than anything I knew. And making new friends. Going to school and figuring out what that was like. And then after that first year, hoping that I would be able to get a job in the industry that I wanted. It was, yeah. Everything was unfamiliar. Oh my God, winter? What is winter?
Boston? Oh my Lord.
Winter in Boston? Let me tell you, in 2013 to 14,
woo!
Holy crap.
Yeah, because those were like, if I remember correctly, because that was the time I was in New York also, those were record lows, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I couldn't understand why anybody would choose. And I know I had chosen to live there, but I was like, why do people live here? I don't understand. Why is it cold? I bought so much stuff that I don't use anymore because it was like overkill. But I bought so much stuff from like the outlets, like parkas and long underwear and many socks. I was still cold all the time. That was hard, and that was hard that first year. Yeah. So
Mia, going back, because it's with you, it's different because you've lived there before. So it's like it's in your case, it's like reintegrating.
Right. I think the dynamic that was so different for me is like, yeah, I'm back where I grew up, essentially. But I have a child coming. I had my son on the way. my first year,
The biggest game changer of them all, right?
I know, and it was the greatest thing. And I had him in October. That was the first year that I was back in the U.S. and my family was either California or Florida. So I was just here in Vegas, and I, like when Jet said, like, making new friends as an adult, how do you make new friends? Like, what is not a sketchy way to make new friends that you're not trying to like be romantically linked with? You're just trying to be like homies. Like, it's just
that's a great point, because it's, I'm sorry to step on over you, but I just wanted to squeeze this in. That's a great point, because it is totally different in the Philippines and in the US when it comes just to that simple thing.
Correct.
Am I correct? Or is that wrong? So. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So it was just odd, and then here I am, this pregnant woman trying to make friends. It just looks odd, and they're like, "Oh, where'd you move from?" Like, the Philippines. They start talking louder to me, and I'm like, I understand English, but okay. It's just, they had more of a culture shock than I did coming back. They anticipated me not really understanding things, and it was different. I don't think I was all too fearful. I was more afraid of bringing a kid into this world and not having a clear-cut like plan.
Right. Was comfort the biggest sacrifice? And when I say that,
absolutely,
you know, living in your, I mean, I don't want to talk about too much of a personal thing here for both of you. Obviously, I know both of you personally, but, you know, living in a house, living with helpers, you know, like Jess said earlier, she's never cooked in her life and all of these things. And then there is the work part of it, the comfort at work, in the sense that you're getting all of these free things left and right, from clothes to shoes to hygiene stuff, which I'm not going to get into. Which I suppose, okay, let me try to put myself in your shoes. Which I suppose you're in a new country, something as simple as a haircut or a wax or whatever, which you all got anytime you wanted in the Philippines. This costs I am still on radio. You know, a boatload of money. Was comfort the biggest thing that you had to give up, to sacrifice, to compromise? Explain that to all of our viewers and listeners, please.
I mean, comfort is one thing, and I thought when I moved here, like, yeah, I'm losing all these comforts of having my mom around, my brother there if ever I needed anything.
Hi, Tita Gigi.
Hi, Mom. So, like, those comforts, yeah, sure, but everything else I feel like was a privilege. It didn't come at no expense. It came from people that trusted us on radio, people that believed in the work we were doing. It was a privilege more than a comfort. So letting that go makes it a little easier, because it's like, what am I doing to earn that?
No, that's a really great way of putting it. And I was trying to like work through what I was thinking. Yeah, I think my mom asks me that all the time.
Free alcohol, free.
My mom literally asks me that all the time. Like, don't you are tired? And I'm like, no, actually, you know, it was actually great. You know what it was? It was empowering. It felt good to know that I could do the things that I wanted to do and like take care of myself. And I mean, that first year was a little scary because, you know, I was lucky. I was already very lucky because I came over here. I had the paperwork. I had some savings from work. So it was okay. But like, I wasn't making any money that first year. I was like, you know, I was working as a lab assistant, like a computer lab person, to make $10 an hour just to have some inflow. It was a little scary, but I had my parents to help me. So I, you know, the comfort part, yeah, those were privileges, and it didn't feel like a huge sacrifice, really. I was choosing this, and that was also a privilege that I got to choose that. And I think that was what I was coming into. And it was just like, this is all just part of the learning process. You learn how to adjust to a different place and a different expectation and a different life.
That's a big thing. And I think, I don't know if if I remember correctly, it's part of the advice that I gave to you, Jet, and a couple of other junior jocks that I had the pleasure of boarding with and training before, who had to leave the country and had to get into different fields in different countries in fashion and all that. And I would always say, if your parents are going to support you, and when I mean support, doesn't always mean monetarily. I mean, if they're behind your decision, and they always ask me, Boom, what am I gonna do? Oh shoot, sorry, Boom, what am I gonna do? Yeah, what am I gonna do? What am I, am I gonna do this? Am I gonna give up? But I'm already making inroads in media and all that. And I say, at their age, at your age back then, and at their age, I remember a couple of junior jocks before, I would always tell them, dude, go for it. Why? Because you have that fallback. Your family's never gonna let you. That's your safety net. If at the worst case scenario, if things do not work out, and you pray that it would for their own personal development. But if things don't work out, you'll always have your family to come back to in the Philippines, who have money, whatever money means to you guys, right? I mean, so there's always that you can gamble, as opposed to let's say, and I don't mean to get personal here, but this is a conversation. It's just, I don't want to just always interview you, but as opposed to, let's say, if this happened to me at that age, and I had that opportunity, I probably wouldn't take it. And the reason behind that was because at that time, I had to make money to put myself through school or whatever, to give to my parents, for whatever other reason, right? There was no safety net. Whatever I made, that is what I was supposed to use. So there's no plan B, there's no option B.
Right.
That's why I always advise, if you have the opportunity and your parents are going to back you up, and if your parents are going to say, hey, if it doesn't work out, we gotta resort to come back to. I know that's not the case, but you know what I'm saying, right? That's an exaggeration. But go for it, right? So I suppose that gives you confidence also, knowing that there is some sort of a fallback. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but
you ask, people are gonna like the question of why would you do it? I mean, at the same time in my head, it's like, how could I not? Like, there was almost no risk, really. Like, people are always like,
That's
oh, you were so brave to go by yourself. I'm like, yeah, but
great point.
Like, what was I risking? Really? You're right. Like, my mom still calls me and it's like, so when are you going? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm here. I like it here. Love you.
Right.
And I wasn't, so I try to be very aware of that. This is not something that not everybody can do. I was very, very lucky to have had that chance. And like, it would almost have been a disservice to me and to my family to not have tried.
Correct.
So I like to think. Anyway.
Right. It's a good way. I mean, Mia, the same here. I see your mom every now and then. Yes, she doesn't send me food anymore, and that is very unfortunate. Tita Gigi and your arroz alocobana that I miss.
I know.
I'm calling you out. Totally calling you out. But your family, your mom here is pretty comfortable too. So the worst case scenarios, you can always come back, right? Is
right.
that?
But even without it being worst case, I've always played with the idea of coming back. I mean, I love the Philippines.
Okay.
It's so good to me.
So I'm not leaving India yet. Okay, I'm still gonna wait. Just in case.
I mean, I always like, even last year, I've had this conversation with you. I'm like, I was looking at schools for Gabriel. It's always gonna be there. I think when something treats you so well. And again, it's also a privilege. It's like I look at the US as a great thing, and I also look at the Philippines as another great thing. So I'm in a good position to even have these options. I think it's even a luxury to have two choices, but that cushion is going to run dry at some point. And for me, things have shifted a lot this year, where you just have to keep pushing forward. You just have to make it happen, because then what? These last few years have been in vain? Absolutely not.
Do you miss it? Do you miss the lifestyle? I mean, okay, yeah. This is. No, I want you to be. I want you to be truly honest. Do you miss the lifestyle? Do you miss not the comfort? Let's not talk about that. You know, obviously, we're all gonna miss that. That's fine. It's nice if it's there, but it has taught you to be independent and empowered, as Jessica mentioned earlier. But do you miss? Okay, here. Do you miss the fame? Do you miss the popularity, the fame, the recognition, the acknowledgement, the freebies, and all of these things? Let's be real, and you know, just talk about that. Is that something that, woo, man? Damn, what the hell am I thinking? I gave up all of that.
Jet?
I was waiting for you to go first.
Oh, okay, I will. Yeah, I mean, it was convenient, and we had friends. I mean, parts you and I, we had all the same people that were pouring into us on the show, and we worked together on TV. So
yeah, all the plastic surgery that was free, you know.
Exactly. All
the girls stuff, all the girls free stuff. I got that too. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Exactly, but it's like it was convenient. It was nice. The massages, it was great. Again, all things that I believe were. It's not a regular everyday comfort. This doesn't come by with any career choice. It doesn't come with any job that you land. Yeah, I miss it, but it's again a luxury. Things that you can be without, but yeah, it's a little tougher, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are parts of it that I do miss, like, and there were parts of it that I missed more earlier on. Also,
Right.
But yeah, but like,
was it more material than anything else? Was it material? Was it material, or was it the recognition? You know, all the.
I think it was an adjustment at first, and I think the material stuff was hard for a while. Not hard, but like it was just like, yeah, you missed it. The lifestyle. You remember when I said I was gonna go to bed at 11? Like that wasn't a joke. So I don't miss the sort of late nights and the crazy work hours, and like we're working 7 days a week. You know, and you had to be on all the time. Like I don't miss that, honestly. Like it's been, I've been able to, I feel like, grow up a little bit more and grow into myself more because I didn't have to do those things. For some people it's not like that, and I think for me it was just really, it's probably really healthy for me. Right. So no, I don't really miss it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like that. I like an honest answer. We're talking to Jessica Mendoza, formerly, of course, the top 5 at 5 Magic 89.9. Mia Bayuga from On Demand and from Good Times. You're watching us live on Facebook, on Twitch, and on the Kumu app. And for those listening on radio, my name is Boom Gonzalez. I don't think the last time I wore this shirt, I think I was still with you, Mia.
I had that photo.
We had that picture. Remember when I had that pose and it looked totally creepy? It looked so bad when I was highlighting this, but it looked like I was highlighting something else. It looked like I was highlighting your knockers. I remember I still have the picture. I'm sorry. Yeah, we're having them here. People who of course were great Magic 89.9 DJs and were extremely popular and gave up everything, packed their bags, and now they're totally in different situations and in different fields. In a way, yeah, obviously very different in the sense that the attention is not as much anymore. And again, Mojo Jojo was supposed to be with us. You've unplugged also yourselves from social media, not totally, but context-wise from the Philippine standpoint, because it's so different here. When you talk about social media, the context being in the Philippines, and did you have any kind of pressure to always look a certain way, to be a certain way? to say certain things constantly when you were here in the Philippines. You know what I'm talking about, right? When it's a different. I mean, we're one of the biggest users of social media, obviously, if not the
Right.
biggest. I mean, at least in Asia, for sure, we are. If I mean, just sheer, especially because we're not as big in terms of the population of India or China or anything like that. But pound for pound, we're definitely the champions when it
There it
comes
is.
to social media. I think that's the best way to put it, right? Um, and that can be very bad. That can be very toxic if you don't know how to handle it, if you're not secure with yourself, and if you're constantly looking for validation through social media,
Right.
which is what a lot of people do in this day and age. That must be also, correct me if I'm wrong, refreshing for you guys. Did you have to be always on when you were here on a daily basis? If everybody was always snapping photos of you, whether you were in the gym or whatever? You were celebrities. Let's put it that way.
When I was at Andy, yeah. Like everywhere we went, I was like, dude, no, I don't know. There's a toning down, right? Like, I don't have to be as conscious about it. I think we're at a place in the world where anything you put on social media, you're just aware that anything you put out there is out there forever.
Right, but what isn't it more so just magnified here in the Philippines when you were here?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? You see, it's different when I explain this to somebody else, but if I explain it to both of you, I assume at least that you get what I'm saying because you've had it. You've had it. You understand the context of being under the microscope all the time.
Yeah, I think it's hard. You kind of lose sight of who you are on air and off air. So you kind of haze those lines between the two, and you're just like, well, which one am I going to be today? And then it's not a choice anymore.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just you're not as thoughtful about what you're putting out there. I mean, I wasn't. I'm just saying this on my behalf. It's just I was just pulling out tweets and posts and just anything to be visible.
All right. Jet? Well, I mean, I know you're constantly on social media because it's still part of your work to a certain degree, but not in
I
a...
think about that a lot. I think
Good. Okay.
because I transitioned to journalism, right? And
Sorry, what was that again?
I transitioned to journalism,
Right.
and there are different expectations and there's different rules for what you can and can't tweet and what's considered appropriate if you want to maintain credibility. And you and I had a long talk about what you should and shouldn't do if you want to stay credible right before I left. And I think
I don't know if what I said would, did you any good, but yeah.
But like after, now I'm much more careful. I've never been a particularly opinionated person, especially in like my public persona. And so I've just sort of stayed with that. But also like endorsements and stuff like that. Those were things that I had to deal with, like kind of backtrack a little and be like, no, I wasn't a journalist in the same way then. Like,
right.
endorsements, it was a different thing, and I'd like kind of explain that a little bit, because that's not something you can do and still be like a journalist. Like it's not.
Right.
You can't be. So it was a really weird transition. But I think ultimately for the better. I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about just needing time to sort of pause and sort of take stock of where I was. I think it was very easy to get caught up in like the gratification of being in the public eye and like people liking what you were doing or what you were looking like or
sexiest, 5 cutest, those things, right?
I still carry that around my back.
Like it makes me feel like that's the kind of affirmation you need. A decent human.
I don't know about you. I still bring that up.
I made that list, by the way, the 5 sexiest female DJs on radio, on Philippine radio.
You clearly didn't pay enough for me.
It must have been my lip gloss that no, but you know what I mean, right? But that's a great answer and a great insight also. For those who miss you, we're talking to Mia Bayuga and Jessica Mendoza, of course, from Magic 89.9. What? Here's a question, random. And please, I want you to be as honest as possible. It's just the three of us talking anyway, and it looks like Mojo won't be able to join us anymore. What, in your opinion, individual opinion, was your peak when you were here? When you thought, man, this is great. Man, it's happening for me. When was that, and what were you feeling, and what time was that in your career? Now, Nia, yeah, obviously we've done a lot of work with the UFC, with ABS-CBN
Right.
Sports. You did some TV work also, obviously with Ball's channel, and then radio, and then hosting, and then endorsements, and of course Jessica, the PBA, the UAP, and then writing, and all of these things, and other endorsements, other photo shoots, and glam shoots, and all that. When did you think was your peak here in Manila?
Hard question.
Oh, I got mine. Ready.
Oh, go ahead.
Let's go.
All right, let's go.
Let's blow some smoke just for our listeners, just real quick to reminisce. Yeah.
No, only because you were there. I used to go with you to like your hostings, right? Like when Kobe was there, it was such a huge thing, and I would just look in awe of just all the eyes on you, and you're just carrying this event. Just putting the spotlight on whoever is there.
Hey, this is not about me, partner. This is about you. Come on.
No, listen. And I just remember being in that position where I'd watch and I'd be like, okay, if this is for me, it's going to happen. And I'm just going to trust in that. And then you and we were hosting for ABS, for Boss Channel. And when GSP came, George St. Pierre, came to the Philippines, and we took him on this full tour. Right. We did open workouts. We took him to a club. What was a bar? Mall of Asia. The open workout. I can't even remember how many people were there, but it was just a massive crowd. And I remember that very moment I was sweating because the lights were behind me. Like the entire screen was just lights, and I was like, hold it together, Mia, hold it together. I'm sweating, and I'm just like, don't let the mic fall. This guy's coming out soon. Right. I'm just looking at you like, Parts, help me. And it was just a great day. But so that moment was the moment I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And this is going to mean something later. Not in the sense of fame or attention, but we made some really great relationships there too. I still talk to some of the guys that we interviewed from Ball's channel that are part of the UFC, and I'm still in touch with them. I still work with some of them, and it's one of those things where, again, I look back on it and I remember that very moment where I was like, this is going to mean something. Not in the sense of what it was in that very moment. Right. The two names that you dropped, those are already in consideration for the greatest of all time, right? I mean, you're talking about Kobe Bryant and George St. Pierre from the NBA and the UFC. So, that's not a bad position. Or not a bad time. We have a lot of great pictures and memories from those times. That's, and it's the best time. It was the best time that we had. Again, a luxury, a privilege. No question. No question. Jessica, when did you think, now that you had a little bit of time to think and a little bit of alcohol to drink?
It's funny because it's so interesting.
It's okay. You can brag. It's fine.
No, I'm so interested that Mia has a moment because I can't remember a single moment where it was just this is it. Her entire career was a high. Huh? Your entire career. It was so great the entire time, obviously.
Hey, come on, man. I mean, you reported for the UAP for Ateneo for what, 3 years? You were one of the few, if I'm not, was it 2 or 3 years?
No. I only did 2 there. I was one of the few who I did. My first year I was a senior, and then my second year I wasn't a student anymore.
That's the rare part because I don't think we've ever done that again or even before that. I may be wrong. I'm no UAP expert. Oh yeah, that's right. Gretchen, my other TV partner. TV partner. That's right. But it was very rare to have, courtside reporters who were not from the school anymore. So that's UAP, big deal. PBA, big deal. FHM, big deal. So
Yeah, I mean,
um,
also like what, my last couple of years working with Andy, I think we had hit a point in our, because like I don't know if people remember this, but when Andy and I first started, we had never met each other. Like we were not like friends who just decided to start a radio show. Like we were strangers. I think we finally felt like we got into our groove like a couple of years, like probably a year or two into that whole thing. And I think probably for me as and I'm applying this backwards. I have no actual memory of like this is it, but I think
yeah. Right. Please, yes.
Probably the last couple of years, as I had gotten like into the groove of the PBA. I mean, we were working all the time, and I think that getting into the groove of like how do I pair up my schedule, working for like doing this certain days of the week and then Magic 4 or 5 days a week, and just like getting into the groove of that felt like there were moments where like I would run on a Sunday, we would church or whatever, have quick lunch with my family, and I'd be like driving away from my Lola's house and like do I have the right shoes, and it's just like am I and just like I think that was probably for me like I'm working, like I am, this is my life, like this is it, without really realizing that that's what that was. But looking back, like I've never worked 7 days a week at that level ever since. It's just now I'm like I like weekends, they're great.
Jessica was a courtside reporter when I could only dream of being.
I didn't even I mean, you know this, before I started I didn't even know basketball. It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah, me too.
No,
me too.
No, you know why I asked that. I knew I didn't know what you guys were gonna answer, but I like that you made that point, Jessica, because I think obviously now that I look back at my career, and it's a great time to look back because I don't have a TV station right now. My TV station just got shut down. So my sportscasting career is probably over already by force. Yeah. So yeah, I'm laughing at it now. I'll cry later when we turn
it
the call
hurts.
off. But it's funny how the younger guys, whether they're guys or girls, and I've gotten comments, and I don't mean to make this part of the show about myself, but I've gotten comments about that's the life I want to live. Remember, Jessica and Mia, people would see me, and Mia knows this, I don't sleep, I am attending to this and all that. And I don't say that proudly, by the way. It's not something like I'm, hey man, I'm like, no. I mean, it's partly necessity. It's partly it's a passion, partly it's and people, I've had exposure to younger college dudes who would go through the audition process and actually hear that from them and say that, oh, that's the lifestyle I want to live. You're working 24/7 and you're attending to so many things. You're running from one place to another, and in Manila traffic, that's not anymore such a great thing, as opposed to back in the day. And then when you get a little older and with benefit of hindsight and, benefit of perception, obviously you're thinking, that's what you think. But I understand what they say also, because that's part of earning your wings. That's part of making your name, and then you get to a point where and I told Jessica this and I told Mia this, where you already, oh, hell no, I am staying home. Oh no, I'm going to be drinking with my friends. I'm going to be, I'm going to do my own stuff, spending obviously a lot of my time out of the country with my wife in different countries and all that. So again, and then you realize, man, I worked myself to the ground back in the day. I mean, to a certain extent still now when I'm here in the country. But
I've never heard you say my wife before. I'm so excited.
Yeah, well,
we haven't talked about it. Oh,
I'm a little worried that after this show she might, file for whatever. But but you know what I'm saying? I mean, when you look back at all of that, I love that phase of mine, and I still go through it every now and then. And I know what Jessica was saying. because you have to earn your wings, and but sometimes the proving part, it has to end. You got to get time to yourself, and to a certain degree, this lockdown, helped me to focus on certain things. Unfortunately, obviously, I haven't seen my wife in 4 months, and that's the problem because we got locked down. We separated after the whole thing, but not separated, just in case, but physically. So I see where, and this is why I asked the question where the whole, peak, the peak thing and all that. Okay, one last question.
Wait, before you go there,
Go ahead.
The difference, I mean, another way to look at it also is like you guys are talking about like earning your stripes and your wings and whatnot, but the intention of going into it also, like you went into broadcasting for very different reasons as maybe someone who wants your lifestyle.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we had a UFC fighter who came to visit in the Philippines, and he had said how much the sport has changed because you have these new and upcoming fighters who are coming in for the prize money, or they're coming in for the fame and the Twitter followers. Wherein when he started back in the day, it was for the sport, for the love of the sport. And that's why he's gotten to where he's at. So again, I think it also comes down to the reason why you even started broadcasting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you guys know me. I never cared about that stuff. I do what I do because I guess it gets me going. It's what I love. I like just, biting down on that mouthpiece and just doing whatever it is that I wanted to do, regardless of what other people would say, not to get any kind of, followers or anything like that. It was just because I loved it from the very start. And I think that's the benefit of starting my career without social media. I started that way. So by the time social media came to me, that was an add-on. It wasn't what defined me or what I needed for validation. It was an add-on. I'll use it for work. I won't let it use me. I'll use it for work. That's always my stand.
The topless photos was for work.
Yeah, obviously.
You can like the work and also like the social media fame. Right?
I'm sorry. What was that again?
I said you can love the work and also like really love the fame and the social media stuff that comes with it. Like they're not always mutually exclusive.
Mutually exclusive, yeah. It's just a degree, I guess, that which do you love more? Which, did you ever think to yourselves that? Now I'm going back. Had you ever? Okay, this no more. I'm done experimenting. I'm done. If it was an experiment at all, this is different from the question earlier about coming back. Just in terms of your life's choice, because technically this episode is about life's choices. It's not about just reminiscing about Magic 89.9 and what you guys did. It's about two things. It's about drinking on Facebook Live and about life choices. And did you ever get to that point where, nah, this is not working? Or no, it's never been like that. I'm pushing through. I'm going for it. I have too much pride to just go back to the Philippines.
I still have that.
What do you mean? Yeah, really?
Yeah, and things are great.
Okay.
Like things are great. I don't think you have to come to a point where it's a fallback. Because
anymore.
I don't think I would want it.
All right.
Yeah, I still am like, maybe I'll go back next year.
But for a totally different reason, not because probably it didn't work out. That's a whole different thing. Jed did, correct us if we are wrong in the perception that this all worked out for you.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. I moved to Boston 2013, lived there for a little under 3 years, moved to LA for work, did that for 2 years. I'm in DC now. I moved here 2 years ago. I met a person. It's worked out. Like career has worked out, relationships worked out. I'm in a good place. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to be like, well, now I'm going back. It's like, I think my experience with my career in the Philippines was a really really important foundation for where I am now.
Right.
I could have been here without that, and I've said that before. I don't think there was, if I'm totally honest, I don't think there was a time. I think I've been lucky enough to not have looked back and been like, boy, I need to go back now because it's not working out.
Right. That's good. Well, we're happy to hear that. Obviously, as much as obviously, no, I mean, as much as possible, as much as your fans, friends, family will miss you here. You know, I'm sure that what makes up for people who miss you guys here is the fact that they know that you're happy, and that's, you know, that you're okay, and that there's no regrets when it comes to what you did. All right, we're talking to Mia Bayuga, for those listening on Magic 89.9 on radio and working from home or doing whatever it is that you're doing at home. Mia Bayuga, Jessica Mendoza, Magic 89.9. Back in the day, it is probably, 3 a.m. already in the case of Jessica, and for Mia, Mia's okay. She'll be okay. Cheers, Muna. Cheers, Muna. I got a couple of questions. Cheers, we're all drinking. Refill. I know it's not free this time, Jessica, but go ahead and refill.
Please. Is this a thing we can do?
Okay. One of the reasons why I also wanted you guys here on this show, other than also having Mojo Jojo supposedly originally, is the context of you being in the United States. And there are a lot of similarities in terms of what's going on here and what's going on in the United States. But it's different when you're talking to somebody from there. And you can talk honestly about it. In the case of Jessica, you're probably covering it too for work, right? So, to a certain degree. Tell us from your perspective. First, COVID-19. You know, how bad is it there? How are people taking it or not taking it seriously? And depending on the state that you're in, I suppose some states are, not taking it seriously. Some states are a little more locked down than the others. And also, Jessica and Mia, in terms of racial injustice, we just went through and are going through in the United States all of these protests. The last time I was talking to Mojo a couple of days ago, he just joined the protest.
Right.
That's why I was always saying, I hope he's okay. He's not joining us today. He was supposed to join us, but I hope he's okay. With all the protests that are going on, it's different when you're talking to people who are experiencing it firsthand and not just watching the news and watching it on Twitter or on social media. Just give us a little bit of an overview from your standpoint, regardless of whether you're outside looking in or you're just observing or covering. In the case of Jessica, please let us know about that.
Are there a lot of protests in Vegas, Mia?
Yeah, there was. There was. I liked your segue, by the way. What first? You want
once a host, always a host.
I know. Just ready. Yeah. Okay, you have to think about Las Vegas as a whole. It's a tourist destination. So without people flying in, without our hotels open, our bars were closed, casinos were closed, we were down like 95% in visitor volume.
And that affects your business too, right? The stuff that you're a part of, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I work in the fitness industry, so
Correct.
all gyms were closed, but I also work in LA with law enforcement, which will push over to the whole racial side. But you just have to think about how many jobs are jeopardized with the lockdown. And in schools, I mean, my son's school was closed since early March. So he hasn't been there. There's no daycare. There's no summer camp. So I'm home with him. Thankfully, I'm in a position where I can be, but can you imagine if I wasn't, I would have to find daycare that I would even trust. We just initiated a whole mask mandate. Bars opened and they're closed again.
Right.
We tried to go back into some sort of normalcy, but nobody was following the guidelines, and we're back to where we started. And it's like a race between us and California on who's got the most new cases. It's sad, and it's real.
Right.
I think people choose whether or not they believe in it, but it's really not about your own immune system. It's about those around you. And I think it, like, I don't want to call anyone out specifically, but it's so selfish to move like nothing's going on. This is really happening. And there are other things happening wherein this virus also proves a bigger threat to those families. So I've just been taking every precaution and staying home. Thankfully, I can. But yeah, it's a big deal. It's real. I don't know how else to put it, but it's real.
And the elections are coming up, so that that puts a different spin to it, right?
It's really interesting. Like people like, and I don't blame them because this is how I think of DC. Thought of DC before I lived here, but DC, it's not a huge city. You know, we're probably, I mean, by the standards of most places, like we're probably like 700,000 people. So yes, it's big, but it's also a very like packed city. And so I personally live probably 2 miles from the White House. What is that? I mean, in kilometers.
Wow.
I mean, not that far. It's not that far, but like my neighborhood feels so removed. And so like DC isn't really just all like, we're all thinking about politics all the time.
And this is why I wanted to ask you, because again, it's different from a Filipino standpoint. It's different from your standpoint. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, but it is very present. And I think, you know, I have a lot of friends who work in government now and politics, and it's like every time there's a new president, every time there's a new administration, the whole vibe changes. But at the end of the day, DC is a very progressive, liberal city. And so you see very clearly when something is happening on the side of liberals and progressives, it's very, very obvious here. The protests were enormous here. Like the Target down the street had to board up its windows because they were afraid of like whatever. But it was also like a very like open place, and I think when all of that happened, it was interesting because those protests were really big here, but everybody had their masks on. Like it's a really interesting space to be operating in. I was telling you guys before the show that DC's we started phase 2 in June, phase 2 reopening. So a lot of there are a bunch of bars that are open.
And you were the first one there.
I haven't been anywhere but the grocery store. I have to go to the grocery store once in a while, and the liquor store also. But the masks are pretty, like, they're on. People are wearing them. People get it. There's not as much, like, within the city, I don't think there's as much, like, arguing about what you should and shouldn't do. And so actually our cases are pretty low and they were up in March and April the way they were everywhere, but they've been pretty low. I think the anxiety is for places like Mia was talking about, where like people don't believe that this is something that they need to do.
Right.
It's been interesting to watch how that's evolved in different places and in different cities. But here, personally, I think people are pretty aware about what they can do.
Yeah, I asked that.
Most of my friends have been just at home.
Well, I asked that question because, I mean, from a Philippine standpoint and the United States standpoint, two different, obviously, countries, but the similarity is the cases are rising. I mean, there has been a constant spike. We're everywhere, not everywhere, but in a lot of countries in the world, things are going down. Things are a little bit under control to a certain degree. Even here in Southeast Asia, things have been under control in certain countries as compared to what's happening in the Philippines in terms of cases, active cases, deaths, and all of these things. So that's why I wanted to ask that question, because, you know, I wanted you guys to provide a little bit of context because that's always important, especially because you're there experiencing it. And if because here we all take that seriously. Obviously, we're all wearing masks and all that. Not that it has done anything. I mean, in terms of bringing the number down, but at least we've in terms of the mask part, I don't think anybody is opposing it. In the U.S., there's certain rallies where no, we're not wearing masks. No, Donald Trump just last Sunday here in Manila, or Saturday night there in the U.S., just wore his mask for the very first time, I believe, in a rally. So that's like, that's the reason why I'm asking it, because context is always important. What do you hear about the Philippines? Regardless of whether it's a family or what you read, because that's also very different. What do you know? What do you hear? What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about like the cost of having a positive test or even negative is still costly. And it's like, who can afford these things?
Right.
Even here in the US, hospitalization, like let's say you're uninsured, or maybe your insurance isn't as great, or you're taken to a facility that isn't insured, doesn't fall under your coverage. It's like, it's costly, and we're here, we're out of work. There's only so much the government can give as a stimulus package. For the Philippines, I just hear about the cost of it. It's like, it's just too expensive to get sick, but it's too expensive to stay home.
And not making any kind of money.
Right. There's no income, there's no cash flow. So how are you supposed to protect your family? It's such an odd place to be, where it's like, there's really no lesser evil of the two.
Right. Jet, what does your family and friends tell you? What do your family and friends tell you, rather?
You hear that the cases are rising. You hear that other things are happening besides COVID that have, that people have been debating.
Right.
I'll take in my language here. My parents haven't left. My dad is not like super healthy, and so
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, he's fine, but he's one
susceptible.
Of those.
Yeah, he's one of those.
Probably going to be like more inclined to get it, and so they just want to stay safe and like are at home. So we're lucky enough that my parents can work from home. I can work from home. Most of my friends can do the same, but yeah, I think that's just like probably one of the ways that you can really make the parallel from here to there, and like try to understand like why people are so against. I don't know if the mask has become kind of a symbol of this, but like of this like idea that it's a choice between your livelihood and health.
Yeah.
And it's a really difficult and really ultimately unfair choice, because like people like me, us, I have an option to work from home.
Right. Not everybody has that option.
It's just inconvenient. It's just kind of an interruption, but it's not upending my life. I'm not risking my life for the life of my family because I cannot go to work. And like to understand that how that plays out here and how that plays out in the Philippines. I don't know. It's really hard.
We have a final few minutes left here with Mia Bayuga, Jessica Mendoza, formerly of Magic 89.9. Mia left 2012, Jessica left 2013. For those who are not in the know, they did long time running shows, Top 5 at 5, On Demand, and Good Times on Magic 89.9. We have a few minutes left with them. Unfortunately, we are not going to be graced by the presence of Mojo Jojo, who was supposed to be part of this show. It would have been great. Also, because he was active with the protests, it would have been great to get his opinion and his side of things. Cheers, Muna. Is anybody still drinking with me? I know it's too late. Okay. Context is always very important. Have you experienced, as I have a final few minutes with you, have you experienced any kind of, racial injustices personally? There's so many things coming out now. Our friends, TJ Manoto, Ginger Conejero, they're experiencing all of these, this indiscrimination, and they've been posting about it. It's been featured in the TV shows, also how they have been getting it. Asians, I just saw one last night of Asians walking in the park, and in the U.S. I forget which part, and they were asking them to go back to where you belong. You know, some Americans, some white Americans saying that. Have you personally had any kind of brush with that kind of discrimination as Asians or as Filipinos, to be even specific? No, really. Good.
I haven't.
Good. That's good. You're one of the lucky ones then.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there is a certain profiling that happens
Right.
when, as an Asian female walking into a male-dominant environment, which I work in.
Fitness, yeah.
It's a bit of a hurdle, but it's not to the extent of what's going on here. It would be so selfish of me to say that, yeah, I'm facing racism. Like, me personally, okay, I'm not saying about anyone else, but it just wouldn't be right for me to compare the injustice that's going on. It's so vastly different.
Wow, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Again, because Jessica, before you say your piece, again, this is the reason why I'm asking these things is because context and perception is very important. You know how when you guys were here in the Philippines, and you have American friends, I'm sure, in the Philippines, people are monkeys, or they're always at war, or they're always fighting against each other. All of these things either get blown out of proportion, covered by news or whatever, or just not in the right context. And this is the reason why I'm asking. I know it exists, and I know it's everywhere, but personally, I wanted to ask. And so, go ahead, Jessica. You were about to reply.
I think he's right. Like, it's different. Like, so I work in a predominantly white. My company is like largely white. I'm probably one of very few people of color who work there. Before coming here, I'd never really thought about race, very critically.
Right.
You walk into a room and you're the only person who doesn't look like everyone else. You're suddenly very aware of like, oh, cool. I guess I'm different. And that's something that I've had to work through over the last few years. And something that in the context of today, like at our company, we've had a lot of conversations about diversity and like what's the right way to like understand that. But also for myself personally, no, I haven't had anybody, I've not experienced racism explicitly in that way. And I think really how I've thought about race the last few weeks and months has been to sort of, because I didn't grow up here. I had to educate myself a little bit more on like, why is this happening and what is the grievance and where is it coming from? And like, that's actually been more of my focus. And it's just like reading more books about racism and like the history of, white and black people, because like that's not something in the Philippines we ever really think about in any like deep way, like, but because why would we, right? But now I live here, and that's something that I am like is around me, and so it feels like my responsibility to understand what's going on a little bit better. So that's really
that or even the sexual harassment thing, the Me Too thing. Remember the last time you were here, Jessica, we were talking about that it was big in the US, and that's something that is not talked about as much as it was during, that whole time in the US. Well, I'm happy to hear. I'm very happy to hear that you guys did not experience this or haven't experienced it.
Because my boyfriend is white, and we, we joke a little bit sometimes about how like, oh, stereotypical white guy with Asian girl, like this is like we get it, we know what that is, but I think we've spent a lot of time thinking about what race means to us as in our like life, in our lives.
Correct.
But also
yes,
more like in a bigger sense.
We're talking to Mia Bayuga and Jessica Mendoza. Final few minutes with them here. We're so happy that they gave us this time of day. It's the wee hours of the morning already in the US, and Jessica's probably going to sleep the whole day while I don't know what Mia's going to be doing, but I really appreciate the time. I guess the biggest question that I want to ask, and I guess I'm asking for the rest of everybody listening, whether they were your fans back in the day or new listeners right now, new viewers, or watching us on Facebook Live, Twitch, and on the Kumu app, and they're listening on Magic 89.9, whether they know you or not, are just like eavesdropping on this conversation is, are you happy? And how different a person are you already from 2013, 2012, respectively, when you left? That's the most important question I would like to probably cap this conversation with.
Happy.
And how
Again,
different are you from?
I mean,
from
this is coming in the context of 2020, where everyone's complaining about or like labeling it as the worst year ever, and we're in July, right?
Great point. Great point.
And Pards, you know, on a personal level, that this is probably my most challenging year as it is.
I know.
But
I know.
I can wholeheartedly say that I'm happy. Not because I'm in America versus the Philippines, but because of the choices that I made and the doors that I opened and the ones that I chose to close. It's like, if you start questioning those closed doors, you're going to start regretting everything and just second guessing yourself. So I'm completely different. I'm raising a son in a time where I'm forced to have these conversations about race, which I didn't think would come so early, but we're all learning together, right? We're learning together. We're taking these steps forward together, and you can't be fearful of what's to come. So your only choice is happy. So I'm good. I'm happy. I miss the Philippines, but it's doing me well here.
The technology will take care of that, I guess. You know, that's a good part about it. Jessica,
you have to have that.
right, yeah. Jessica, your answer.
Yeah. No, I'm happy.
How different are you, and how different of a person are you now?
I think I think I think we all understand who we are at a certain age in our lives. That's probably in your 20s. There are certain parts of yourself that are just going to be who you are. But I think the important part is that I think what I am now is like somebody who recognizes that. And I think I've really come into my own as a person, as an adult, scary as that sounds.
Right.
Yeah, I'm
right.
a different person than I was when I left. Totally.
Right.
And I'm happy. No kids yet, but that I really care about, and I think we're in a good place. And we've both been very fortunate. It has been a really tough year for a lot of people, and I think my goal is just to kind of make the most of the fact that I've been more fortunate than most, and to make that mean something somehow.
I think the goal is really to survive the year, to stay healthy, stay alive. You know, I mean, we laugh about that and we joke about it, but it really means something different in the year 2020 when you say you got to survive, you got to stay alive. And if you come out of the year 2020, consider that as a victory already. And then after that, we'll deal with 2021. We'll deal with the future, and we'll see we're going to power through and see where we are and where we go. And man, it's been, I know a lot of the listeners don't realize it, but yeah, it's been 7 years, it's been 8 years for both of you. And this is the reason why I ask these questions. It's because sometimes we forget about that. Sometimes it just feels like, oh, it's just 4 years ago, 5 years ago. But when you talk about it in this context and in this respect, you realize how long it has been. And the fact that Jessica Mendoza is still up at this moment makes you realize, because she says, because she says that she's asleep by 11. Hey, you know what? I'm sad that Mojo Jojo's not with us today. No, I mean, not here in the episode, because we were planning this for almost a week, and we were so excited about doing this episode. I'm excited for your fans, for both of you, to hear you again, to see you again. You guys don't look like you've aged after the 7, 8 years. You both look the same as you did.
Not true at all.
But it is. But then I've had a few, so. But I'm very happy to hear from both of you. I'm very happy to hear that you guys are happy where you are, and I wish you to be safe and healthy going forward, and that not only is for you but for your families, whether they're with you there in the States or here in the Philippines. I'm so happy, and I really want to thank you for joining me today, Mia and Jessica.
Thanks, Bars. Thanks for having us.
Having us and asking all these questions and making us like dig through our photos and reminisce.
It sounds crazy when you put it that way. You just packed up and left Kika your
I
game. Like, what?
I mean, really, that's what it is. That's what it is. And some things have changed and some things haven't. And part of it is my job. And I'm still here to ask those questions. So I'm so happy to see both of you. And please send your my love to your family and everybody else here in the Philippines or in the US. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Cheers one last time.
This is my last one. Let's go.
One last time for this episode, I mean.
I got you, Jet.
Jessica Mendoza and Mia Bayuga joining us and entering the chat room. We've gone over time, but I'm sure it's worth it. Doesn't matter. It's fine. We're okay. If I get fired tomorrow, it's fine. I don't have a TV station. Then I won't have a radio.
This is it.
I won't have a radio station after. It's fine. I'm good. I'll be unemployed. Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks,
and thank you.
Bye,
Thank you for everybody watching and listening to the chat room. We all will exit now. Have a great day. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Bye, everybody.